Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we will continue on hypothesis testing for one proportion and the difference between two proportion. Okay, let's take a look into the 5 step that involve to conduct the hypothesis testing. For hash knot, we can write the null hypothesis as P equals to P naught. Okay, P naught is any value of the proportion lah. Okay, H1 it can be P less than P naught, right? For the right tail, P greater than P naught, and for the two tail, P does not equal P naught. And then the test statistic here, we will use Z as our test statistic. Okay, why? Because usually the sample size for the proportion is usually will be more than 30. That's why we're going to use Z. So Z equals to P hat minus P naught over P naught times 1 minus P naught over N. Okay, and then the critical value for the left tail, negative Z alpha, right tail Z alpha, and for the two tail, plus minus Z alpha over 2. Okay, don't forget to divide alpha by 2 for the two tail. Okay, and then for the decision rule, we will reject hash knot if Z less than negative Z alpha for left tail. Reject hash knot if Z greater than Z alpha for the right tail. And reject hash knot if Z less than negative Z alpha over 2 or Z greater than Z alpha over 2. Other than that, you also can use p-value approach. Okay, we will reject hash knot if p-value less than alpha. Okay, after you calculate the value of Z and then find the p-value for corresponding Z. Okay, and then finally we make the decision and conclusion. Okay, look at example 21. A study of 200 randomly selected people found that 160 said that brand X tablet was successful in curing their headache. Okay, using alpha 0.05 to test the manufacturer's claim that the tablet is at least 85% successful. Okay, now let's take a look what the information that we have in this example. Okay, so we have the value of P hat in this example, which is P hat equals to 160 over 200. Okay, for those who are successful in curing their headache. Okay, so value is equivalent to 0.8. So when P hat is equals to 0.8, okay, now we want to construct the 5 step lah. Okay, the first step is we want to state the hash knot and H1. Okay, let's look at the claim of the manufacturer. Okay, it claims that the tablet is at least 85% successful. So kalau at least, the notation that we're going to use here is greater than or equals 0.85 lah. So P greater than or equals 0.85. Okay, versus P less than 0.8. Okay, so ingat ya, kalau kenapa saya buat a hash knot is P greater than or equal, because okay, ingat ya, dekat hash knot dekat H1 kita tak boleh guna simbol equal. Okay, so disebabkan at least ni adalah lebih besar sama dengan, that's why dan itu adalah yang kita nak test, that's why dia diletakkan pada hash knot. Okay, so and then the H1 sign yang kita akan gunakan adalah dia punya lawan dia lah. Kalau greater than or equals, dia akan berlawanan dengan dia adalah less than. So less than is left tail. Okay, and then step number 2, we want to calculate the test statistic. So we're going to use Z here. Okay, Z equals to P hat minus P naught. Okay, so P hat kita adalah 0.8 minus, sorry, this one is 0.85, sorry, 0.8 minus P naught. So this is our P naught, 0.8 minus 0.85 divided by, okay, square root of P P naught Q naught over N. So P naught kita adalah 0.85 darab dengan 1 tolak 0.85, 0.15 bahagi dengan our N is equivalent to 200. Okay, so finally we get value of Z equals to negative 1.98. Okay, and then step number 3, we need to find the critical value. So since this is a left tail, so dia adalah negative Z alpha. Alpha kita adalah 0.05. So negative Z 0.05 equivalent to negative 1.6449. Okay, so we want to kita nak develop dia punya decision rule. Kita lukis dulu lah. Okay, so this is our critical value, negative 1.6449. We're going to reject hash naught if the statistic less than negative 1.6449. Okay, so the decision rule is reject hash naught if the statistic less than negative 1.6449. Okay, so based on the test statistic value, is that false in the rejection region? Okay, we can look here. Yes, the value of negative 1.98 is false in the rejection region. Okay, so since test statistic is less than negative 1.6449, so we reject hash naught, reject the null hypothesis. So when we reject the null hypothesis, it means that bermaksud P adalah less than 0.85. So the conclusion kalau dalam ayat lah awak nak buat, okay, kita boleh kata there is a significant evidence to indicate that the tablet is less than 85% successful. Itu dalam bentuk ayat. Okay, now let's take a look into the hypothesis testing for the difference between two proportion. Okay, as usual, we have to define the 5 steps to conduct the hypothesis testing. So our null hypothesis is P1 equals to P2, proportion 1 equals to proportion 2, or you also can write as P1 minus P2 equals to 0. Okay, and then the alternative hypothesis for left tail, P1 less than P2 or P1 minus P2 less than 0. Right tail, P1 greater than P2 or P1 minus P2 greater than 0. And for the two tail, P1 does not equal P2 or P1 minus P2 does not equal 0. Okay, and then the second step is our test statistic. So we're going to use Z also for to find the hypothesis testing for the difference between two proportion, and Z is equivalent to P hat 1 minus P hat 2 minus P1 minus P2 over P bar Q bar times 1 over N1 plus 1 over N2 square root. Okay, yang mana P bar is whole sample proportion, and the formula is given by x1 plus x2 over n1 plus n2. Okay, so remember the value of P1 minus P2 is the value that we take from the hash naught. Okay, but usually we set as a 0 lah. Okay, and then the third step is define the critical value. So again, for the left tail we use negative Z alpha, right tail Z alpha, and the two tail plus minus Z alpha over 2. And then for the decision rule, for the left tail, reject hash naught if Z less than negative Z alpha, and for the right tail, reject hash naught if Z greater than Z alpha, and for the two tail, reject hash naught if Z less than negative Z alpha over 2 or Z greater than Z alpha over 2. Other than that, you also can use p-value approach. Okay, after you calculating the Z value, and then find the p-value for the Z. Okay, and lastly, make a decision and conclusion. Okay, let's take a look into example 24. A sample of 500 teachers and another of 400 parents are selected in a survey. Okay, it is found that 210 of the teachers and 140 of the parents support a plan to abolish the rule on wearing school uniform. Okay, so from this statement we can identify the our first proportion and the second proportion. So first proportion we have, okay, so for P hat 1 we have from teachers lah. Okay, so the sample of the teachers that support the plan is 210. So 210 over 500, we get value of P hat 1 equals to 0.42. Okay, this one is for teacher. Okay, and then okay, for P hat 2 we have for parents. Okay, so parents yang support is 140 over 400, which is equivalent to 0.35. So this one is parents. Okay, now we want to test whether can we conclude that the proportion of teachers who oppose to the plan is different from the proportion of parents who oppose to the plan. Okay, so our first step is, as usual, state the null and alternative hypothesis. So for our hash knot is P1 minus P2 equals to 0, or other than that you also can write as P1 equals P2. Okay, for the H1, P1 minus P2 does not equal 0, or P1 does not equal P2. Okay, boleh tak kisah mana-mana pun boleh, sama sahaja. Sebab apa? Okay, so why we use unequal? Sebab ayat kat sini dia nak test different ke tak. Okay, so this one is two tail. Saya suka tulis kenapa one tail two tail, sebab nak ingatkan kita supaya nanti bila alpha tu kena bahagi dua, kan. Okay, second step, we want to calculate the test statistic. So our test statistic here is Z. So Z is equals to P hat 1 minus P hat 2. Okay, P hat 1 is 0.42 minus 0.35 minus 0, sebab kita state kat sini H1 kita 0 kan, value dia tak ada value apa-apa, so minus 0 lah. Okay, and then kita kena cari P bar. Lupa saya nak cari P bar. So P bar kita adalah, which is P bar is our pool sample proportion. Okay, so macam how to calculate this? P bar adalah x1 plus x2 over n1 plus n2. So 210 plus 140 over 500 plus 400. So we get is equivalent to 7 over 18. Okay, you can use decimal places ataupun pecahan lah, tak ada masalah. Okay, so if P hat is 7 over 18, so our Q hat is our Q bar is equals to 1 minus 7 over 18 is 11 over 18. Okay, saya tulis dulu lah. 1 tolak 7 per 18 sama dengan 11 per 18. Okay, now kita boleh masukkan value kat bawah ni lah. This one is P bar times Q bar, 7 per 18 darab dengan 11 per 18. Okay, darab dengan 1 over n1, 1 over 500 plus 1 over 400. Okay, and then finally we get value of Z is equivalent to 2.14. Okay, now the third step, find the critical value. So since this one is two tail, so don't forget plus minus Z alpha over 2. Alpha 5 divided by 2 is 0.025. So this is equivalent to plus minus 1.96. Okay, so before we write the division rule, kita tulis dulu kita punya where is our rejection region. So at the left side is negative 1.96 and the right side is 1.96. Okay. So the decision rule is reject hash naught if z less, test statistic less than negative 1.96 or test statistic greater than 1.96. Okay, so what can we conclude here? Kita tengok dulu kita punya test statistic value kita 2.14. Is it false in the rejection region? Yes. Okay, dia jatuh dekat the right side. So since test statistic is greater than 1.96, then we reject hash naught. So what can we say here? We can conclude that the proportion of teachers who oppose to the plan is different from the proportion of parent who oppose to the plan. Okay, awak ambil je ayat dekat atas yang ditanya tu kan, kalau nak buat ayat yang lengkap lah. Okay, since the test statistic is greater than 1.96, we reject hash naught. So we can say that the proportion of teachers who oppose to the plan is different from the proportion of parents who oppose to the plan.